Johnny was watching his mom breastfeeding his new baby sister. After a while, he asked, "Mom, why have you got two? Is one for hot and one for cold milk?" A guy with a terrible stutter goes to the doctor. The doctor examines him and says, "I'm afraid the problem is your large penis. It requires such an enormous blood supply, not enough blood is reaching the speech center in your brain." "Well, what can I do?" asks the guy. "We can do a reduction," says the doctor. Can you do that?" "Sure," says the doctor. "Reduction, addition, we can do it all nowadays." And the guy says, I don't know. I'll have to think about it." A week goes by, and the guy just can't stand the stuttering any longer. So he returns to the doctor and asks for the reduction. The surgery goes great. The guy wakes up, and sure enough, his stutter is gone. After a couple of weeks with his normal-sized Johnson, however, the guy has second thoughts. So he returns to the doctor. "Doc," he says, "don't think I'm ungrateful. You solved my stuttering problem just like you said you would. However, I really miss my p***s. You said you can do additions. I'd like you to put the rest of my p*** back on." And the doctor says, "F*** you." Some guys are arguing over who has the dumbest wife. The first guy says, "My wife spent $15,000 on a new kitchen and she can't even cook." The second guy says, "That's nothing. My girl spent $45,000 on a sports car but can't drive a manual transmission." The third guy goes, "That's the best you can do? My wife packed a box of 50 condoms for a week-long business trip and she doesn't even have a p***s." A long-haul trucker pulled into a small roadside cafe and ordered a cheeseburger, a cup of coffee, and a slice of apple pie. Just as he was about to dig in, 3 rough-looking bikers swaggered inside. One biker snatched the trucker's burger and took a massive bite. Another grabbed his coffee and drained it. The third polished off his apple pie in seconds. The trucker stayed silent, calmly paid the bill, and walked out. One biker laughed and said to the waitress, "That guy doesn't look like much of a man, does he?" The waitress smirked. "Maybe not," she said, "but he's definitely not much of a parker. He just ran his 18-wheeler straight over 3 motorcycles." A police station gets 2 new horses and 2 cops are assigned to ride them. They go on a ride and come back pleased. "This horse is great. From now on, I'll always take this one," said the first cop. "My horse is great too, so I'll always take it too," replied the second cop. "But how would I know which one is mine?" asked the first cop. They thought for a minute, and one of them came up with an idea. "Let's cut off this one's tail." The other cop agreed, and one of the horses lost its tail. Next morning, the police chief found out and got really mad. "You idiots cut off the horse's tail." "But otherwise we couldn't recognize them," said the second cop. "Can't you see the black horse is a bit taller than the brown?" A man was drafted and sent to boot camp. At the rifle range, he was given some instructions, a rifle, and bullets. He fired several shots at the target. The report came from the target area that all attempts had completely missed the target. He looked at his rifle and then at the target. He looked at the rifle again and then at the target again. He put his finger over the end of the rifle barrel and squeezed the trigger with his other hand. The end of his finger was blown off, whereupon he yelled toward the target area, "It's leaving here just fine. The trouble must be at your end." A girl asked her granny how old she was. Granny replied she was so old she didn't remember anymore. Then she replied, "If you don't remember, you must look in the back of your panties." Mine say 5 to 6. A man takes a business trip to a small town in a remote valley, and when he checks into the only hotel in the town, he quietly asks the manager, Do you have any girls here for nighttime favors?" "Not really," the manager answers. "We only have Bob." The man is a bit confused, replies, No thank you," and goes to his room. At night, he is lying on his bed sleepless and cannot control his urges any longer, so he decides to call up the manager again. "You know, I've changed my mind. Please call Bob for me. How much does he usually charge?" "You'll need to pay about $80. "Okay, fine. And how will we go about this? I give the 80 to Bob and then we'll "Nah, not really. You'll have to pay 40 to the mayor because it's his city, and he doesn't really like it when this happens, so if you pay him first, he'll look the other way." "Sure, so Bob only gets $40, but then we'll not quite. See, I'll take 20 of those since it's my hotel, and I also don't really like it when this happens. Whatever, if Bob is satisfied with the 20 that are left over, it's fine. So I'll just give those to him and then we can get it on?" "Nope, John and Tony will be splitting the remaining 20. They'll be holding Bob down because he also doesn't really like it when this happens." There was a farmer who grew watermelons. He was doing pretty well, but he was disturbed by some local kids who would sneak into his watermelon patch at night and eat his watermelons. After some careful thought, he came up with a clever idea that he thought would scare the kids away for sure. He made up a sign and posted it in the field. The next day, the kids show up and they saw the sign, which read, "Warning, one of the watermelons in this field has been injected with cyanide." The kids ran off, made up their own sign, and posted it next to the farmer's sign. When the farmer returned, he surveyed the field. He noticed that no watermelons are missing, but the sign next to his read, "Now there are 2." A stranger was seated next to a little girl on the airplane when the stranger turned to her and said, "Let's talk. I'm sure that flights are faster if you strike up a conversation with your fellow passenger." The little girl, who had just opened her book, closed it slowly and asked the stranger, "What would you like to talk about?" "Oh, I don't know," said the stranger. "How about nuclear power?" the girl asked. "Okay," he said, "that could be an interesting topic." The girl continues, "But let me ask you a question first. A horse, a cow, and a deer all eat grass, the same stuff. Yet a deer excretes little pellets, while a cow turns out a flat patty and a horse produces clumps of dried grass. Why do you suppose that is?" The stranger thinks about it and says, I have no idea." To which the little girl replies, "Do you really feel qualified to discuss nuclear power when you don't know shit?" Two little boys stole a bag of mangoes from their neighbor and decided to go to a calm place to share the loot. One of them suggested the nearby cemetery. As they were jumping the big gate to enter the cemetery, 2 mangoes fell out of the bag behind the gate, but they didn't bother to pick them since they had enough in the bag. Few minutes later, a drunkard on his way from a local bar passes near the cemetery gate and heard a voice. "One for me, one for you, one for me, one for you." He immediately sobers up and runs as fast as he can to the local priest. "Father, Father, please come with me. Come and witness God and Satan sharing corpses at the cemetery." They both ran back to the cemetery gate, and the voice continued, "One for me, one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you." Suddenly the voice stops counting and says, "Hey, what about the 2 at the gate?" The priest and the drunkard took to their heels, shouting, "We are not dead yet! We are not dead yet! We are not dead yet!" A kindergarten class had a homework assignment to find out something exciting and related to the class the next day. When the time came to present what they'd found, the first little boy the teacher called on walked up to the front of the class and with a piece of chalk made a small white dot on the blackboard and sat back down. Puzzled, the teacher asked him what it was. "It's a period," he replied. "I can see that," said the teacher, "but what is so exciting about a period?" "Darned if I know," chirped the little boy. "But this morning my sister was missing one, my mother fainted, my dad had a heart attack, and the boy next door joined the Navy." Two guys are out hiking. All of a sudden, a bear starts chasing them. They climb a tree, but the bear starts climbing up the tree after them. The first guy gets his sneakers out of his knapsack and starts putting them on. The second guy says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I figure when the bear gets close to us, we'll jump down and make a run for it." The second guy says, "Are you crazy? You can't outrun a bear." The first guy says, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I only have to outrun you." An Englishman is hiking in Scotland, and he pauses to drink from a stream. A passing shepherd calls out, "Dinna drink frae that, it's all full of coo piss and shite." The Englishman says to him in a cut-glass accent, "I'm terribly sorry, my good fellow, would you very much mind repeating that in the Queen's English?" And the shepherd says, "I'm terribly sorry, sir. I was only asking if you would like to borrow this tin cup and get a proper drink." An eagle is flying over the Grand Canyon when it spies a frog by a stream. The eagle swoops down and swallows the frog whole, flying off with a full stomach. Somehow, the frog makes it through the eagle's digestive tract and pokes his head out of the eagle's asshole. The frog takes a look around and yells back at the eagle, "Hey, eagle, about how high up are we?" The eagle yells back, "Oh, about 10,000 feet." The frog replies, "Really? You wouldn't me now, would you?" A customer walked into a lighting store looking for decoration lights. The attendant showed her top brand, but, wanting to make sure each bulb worked, she asked attendant to take them out of the box and plug them in. He did, and each one lit up. "Great," she said. Attendant carefully placed the string of lights back in the box, but as he handed them to her, she looked alarmed. "I don't want this box," she said abruptly. "It's been opened." There were 5 people aboard an airplane that was experiencing engine trouble and about to crash. The problem? There were only 4 parachutes. As everyone tried to figure out who should get the parachutes, the first person stood up and said, "I'm the smartest person to ever walk the earth. The world cannot afford to lose me." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed a parachute and jumped out of the plane. The second person said, "I'm a mother and my family depends on me. I can't let them down." She quickly took a parachute and leapt out as well. The third person declared, "I'm the head of my household and the sole breadwinner. My family's survival depends on me." With that, he grabbed a parachute and jumped too. Now, only 2 people remained, a 65-year-old man and a 12-year-old boy. The old man turned to the boy and said, "Son, I've lived a full life. You're young and have your whole future ahead of you. You take the last parachute." The boy looked at him and smiled. "Don't worry, sir. There is still 2 parachutes left." The old man was puzzled. "How's that possible?" The boy chuckled and said, "Well, the guy who thought he was the smartest person on earth, he grabbed my backpack." A little girl asked her mother, "How did the human race appear?" The mother answered, "God made Adam and Eve, and they had children, and so was all mankind made." 2 days later, the girl asked her father the same question. The father answered, "Many years ago, there were monkeys from which the human race evolved." The confused girl returned to her mother and said, "Mom, how is it possible that you told me the human race was created by God, and Dad said they developed from monkeys?" The mother answered, "Well, dear, it is very simple. I told you about my side of the family, and your father told you about his." A woman from Michigan and another from the East Coast were seated side by side on an airplane. The woman from Michigan, being friendly and all, said, "So where are you from?" The East Coast woman said, "From a place where they know better than to use a preposition at the end of a sentence." The woman from Michigan sat quietly for a few moments and then replied, "So where are you from, you silly bitch?" A man and his son are in the pharmacy when his son sees the condom display. "Dad," the son says, "what are those for?" "Well, those are for when a man and woman love each other and want to have safe intercourse." "Oh," the son says, "why do they have a 3-pack?" "That's for a college junior. One for Friday, one for Saturday, and one for Sunday morning." "And why do they have a 6-pack?" "That's for college seniors. 2 for Friday, 2 for Saturday, and 2 for Sunday morning." "And why do they have a 12-pack?" "Well, that's for married men. 1 for January, 1 for February." A man named Jack strides into John's stable looking to buy a horse. "Listen here," says John, the owner. "I've got just the horse you're looking for. The only thing is, he was trained by an interesting fellow. He doesn't stop and go the usual way. The way to get him to stop is to yell, 'Hey, hey!' And the way to get him to go is by yelling, 'Thank God.'" Jim nodded his head. "Fine with me. Can I take him for a test run?" John agrees. A few minutes later, Jim is having the time of his life, thinking to himself that the horse sure could run fast. As he speeds down a dirt road, he panics as he realizes there's a cliff edge fast approaching. "Stop!" screams Jim, to no avail. He remembers what he has to say to make the horse stop, just 5 feet from the edge, and yells, "Hey, hey!" The horse skids to a halt with just an inch to spare before a sheer drop of hundreds of feet. Gasping, Jim looks over the cliff edge in disbelief at his good fortune. He looks up to the sky, raises his hands in the air, and breathes a deep sigh of relief. "Oh," he says, relieved. "Thank God." The racehorse owner was annoyed with the running of his horse at the race. He turned on the jockey. "Flaherty, could you not have raced faster?" "Sure I could have, but you know we're supposed to stay on the horse." A kindergarten teacher handed out a coloring page to her class. On it was a picture of a duck holding an umbrella. The teacher had told her class to color the duck in yellow and the umbrella green. Little Johnny, the class rebel, colored the duck in a bright fire truck red. After seeing this, the teacher asked him, "Little Johnny, how many times have you seen a red duck?" Little Johnny replied, "The same number of times I've seen a duck holding an umbrella." A pastor and a taxi driver both passed away and went to heaven. St. Peter was waiting for them at the pearly gates. "Come with me," said St. Peter to the taxi driver. The taxi driver did what he was told and followed St. Peter to a mansion. It had everything you could imagine, from a bowling alley to an Olympic-sized pool. "Wow, thank you," said the taxi driver. Then St. Peter led the pastor to a rugged old shack with a bunk bed and a little old television set. "Wait, I think you're a little mixed up," said the pastor. "Shouldn't I be the one who gets the mansion? After all, I was a pastor, went to church every day, and preached God's word." "Yes, that's true, but during your sermons, people slept. When the taxi driver drove, everyone prayed." A couple was riding a roller coaster at an amusement park, slowly climbing the first big hill. The man was relaxed. The woman suddenly sighed and said, "Just so you know, I'm done with this relationship." He said nothing. The coaster clicked higher. She continued, "I've already emotionally moved on. Also, your cousin? Way better company." Click, click, higher. "I'm keeping the apartment," she added, "and the dog, and the vacation fund." They were nearing the top now, wind howling. "Oh, and I told everyone this breakup was your fault." The coaster paused at the peak. She glanced at him nervously and asked, "Isn't there anything you want to say?" He smiled calmly and replied, "Yeah." "What?" As the coaster tipped forward into the drop, he said, I paid extra for the airbag. A young man and an old woman are traveling by train. And after looking closely at the young man, the old woman leans forward and says, "Excuse me, young man, are you Jewish?" And he looks up from the book he's reading and politely replies, "No, ma'am, I'm not Jewish." A few minutes later, she leans forward again and says, "Excuse me, young man, are you sure you are not Jewish?" And he looks up once again and politely but firmly replies, "No, ma'am, I am not Jewish." There's a long silence. Then the old woman leans forward yet again and says, "Excuse me, young man, are you quite sure you're not Jewish?" And the young man eye rolls inwardly, grits his teeth, and says, "All right, yes, I am Jewish." And then there is silence for minutes, and then, "That's funny," says the old woman, "you don't look Jewish." Once upon a time, the royals of two neighboring kingdoms decided to cement their friendship and their boundaries by marrying one's princess to the other's prince. The youngsters were introduced to each other, and, as luck would have it, they fell in love. The prince's father, however, wanted to be certain the bride came to her marriage bed unsullied. On the pretext of security, he had 4 bodyguards accompany the young couple on every date, even though his wife insisted the girl was pure. Youngsters being youngsters, they would try to sneak a feel or 2, a kiss or 3, but any more was precluded by the presence of the audience. The wedding day finally arrived, and with a lot of pomp and ceremony, the couple were united in matrimony. Finally, their time had come, and the newlyweds retired to their bedchamber. Of course, the groom's father still wanted to know his baby boy had got a chaste wife, so he grabbed his wife by the hand and went to the couple's door to listen to the activities. Inside the room, the bride was complaining quietly to the groom. "My boots are killing me. Please help me take them off first before you kiss me." The groom knelt down and started to take off one boot. It really was tight to start with, and being on her feet all day had made her feet swell up a bit too. After a bit of a struggle, the boot finally came off. The bride exclaimed, "Oh, darling, that feels so good." The prince replied, "So tight, it was so tight, I really had to struggle." Outside the door, the queen elbowed the king and said, "See, I told you she was a virgin." Meanwhile, inside the room, the groom said, "Now for the other one." The king elbowed the queen and told her, "That's my boy." Farmer Brown goes out one day and buys a brand new stud rooster for his chickens. The cocky young rooster walks over to the old rooster and says, "Okay, old fella, time to retire." The old rooster says, "You can't handle all these chickens. Look what it did to me." The young rooster replies, "Now, don't give me a hassle about this, old man. It's time for the old to step aside and the young take over. So take a hike." The old rooster says, Come on, just let me have those 2 old hens over there in the corner. I won't bother you." The young rooster snarls, "Scram! Beat it! You're washed up. I'm taking over." The old rooster thinks for a minute and then says to the young rooster, "I'll tell you what, young fella. I'll have a race around the farmhouse with you. Whoever wins the race gets full reign over the chicken coop." The young rooster smiles. "You know I'm going to beat you, old man, so just to be fair, I'm even going to give you a head start." The 2 roosters line up in back of the farmhouse, a hen clucks "go," and the old rooster takes off running. About 5 seconds later, the young rooster takes off after him. They round the front of the farmhouse, and the young rooster is inches behind the old rooster and gaining fast. Farmer Brown, sitting on the porch, hearing the commotion, looks up and sees what's going on. Quickly, he grabs his shotgun and boom! The young rooster is blown to smithereens. Farmer Brown sadly shakes his head in disgust. "Damn, that makes the 3rd gay rooster I bought this week."